everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. You can actually catch me on stage, not stripping this time, but I will be performing at a special showcase at my home club, which is super exciting, on December 6th at the Penthouse where it all began. So you can check that out. I will spread some more details on once tickets become available. And yeah, that might be one of the last times you see me dancing because I'm slowly retiring from the stripping world. But that's one place you can see me. Of course, I'm found online under Sia on Camera. You can find me on Streamate, streaming exclusively there as a cam model, and also on Sex Panther. Feel free to text me, video me, show me your stuff on Sex Panther there. And for those who didn't know, yes, I've been a sex worker for over a decade, starting off as a sugar baby many, many years ago when I had no clue about sex work and what it was. And now we're here, as I mentioned, doing all the things. And I've been doing this show for just over 5 years. Been talking about how to destigmatize the industry by sharing the lived experiences and stories of all my sex worker friends or people I want to be friends with, or just like people in the industry that are experts. And I'm not just talking about bringing on talent or bringing on other cam models like myself. I have done that, but I also bring on like nonprofit organizations that help benefit sex workers. We talk to people behind the scenes. We talk to producers, like photographers, videographers, anyone that might be adjacent or allies to the sex worker community. I really like to bring those folks on too, to really get a nice, robust perspective of what it's like to be in the work from all aspects and perspectives. So if you're joining me for the first time, that's what the show is about. Hopefully you stick around. For those of you have been here for a while, thank you so much. And also thank you to the lovely Patreon subscribers. You guys have been around since season 4. It's now season 7, and I'm so grateful you guys are here with me on this wild journey. I just want to say hello and give a little shout out to all those who are on the top tier of my Patreon. I'm just going to shout them out here. So you guys are all over the world, which I think is awesome. We have Reina all the way from Sweden. Thanks for supporting. We've got Dale Flood from Vancouver. That's where I'm from. Thank you so much for being a supporter, Dale. We've got Dan and Thea York from Seattle, Washington. McKenna King from Edmonton, as also in Canada. Snoo from Germany, Geyser and Eric Raho. I don't know where you're from, but thanks for being there since day one. Thank you guys so much. If you're curious about what's on Patreon and what your money goes towards, it goes directly to supporting my website hosting costs. And there are a lot of bonus episodes that are on there that you can see. We also have some upcoming guests, some exclusive videos, like full videos, not just the clips you see in social media. All that fun stuff is also available there as well. So there's a lot of great goodies that you can see on there. So consider becoming a patron if you're interested. If you have a few extra bucks, we have tiers starting for as low as $4 a month. So that is that. It's patreon.com/strippedbysia. So today, everyone, I'm super excited to bring on legendary ex-porn star Tera Patrick onto the show today. And I don't think you guys understand how freaking awesome this is, because Tera Patrick was like a big, like really such a big thing, like in the in the early 2000s, where I think porn star really got its title. And Tera was definitely part of all those amazing porn stars during that era. And yeah, I like people that I know, like all of my Asian guy friends, like absolutely were fangirling Tera back in the day. So I'm super excited to bring her onto the show today to talk about anonymity, privacy, moving abroad, what that's like, and really trying to separate like your personal and your private life, which is so hard to balance sometimes in this industry. And I'm just super excited to talk about all the things with her. So I know she's waiting patiently. Tera, are you there?
I'm here. Hello. Thank you.
Yay. so excited to have you on, Tara. I mean,
Thank you for having me and congratulations.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. I mean, my audience, myself, we're all super excited to have you here on the show to join us and share your expertise, share a bit about yourself today. Because obviously, as I mentioned, you're super legendary. You were just iconic during the 2000s. I can't even go on to like name all the awards that you have received over the years. You're an AVN Hall of Famer. You've won XBIZ Awards, Famer Awards, Night Moves, XRCO, Venus, Adult Con. I can't even, like, you've graced the cover of Playboy and Penthouse. Like, the list just goes on and on. And I just feel I cannot do yourself justice here. But I would love for you to maybe introduce yourself to the audience and how you would like to be described. I think that's super important. So feel free to go ahead.
Oh, I get to do my own monologue now. No, I'm just kidding. um, no, well, thank you first of all for getting the years right because I think that there's this discrepancy with trying to understand like what period of time performers performed in. And it's crazy for me to think that I started in June of 1999. So I always say from 2000, I retired in 2009. That's when I was inducted into the AVN Hall of Fame. I started my career in adult films, doing my first film for a legendary director named Andrew Blake, and it was a girl-girl scene. And then I jumped right into boy-girl. I opened my own production studio, Tera, which was distributed worldwide and in North America by Vivid. And Vivid, of course, was like the standard, back then for adult films, just gorgeous productions, beautiful, beautiful films. And Vivid really helped me and TerraVision get off the ground. So I look back on my career in adult films and I love my body of work. I'm really proud of my body of work. I've encapsulated all of it on my website, terapatrick.com. And then when I retired from adult films in 2009, I wrote my memoir, Sinner Takes All, which was published by Gotham by Penguin Books. So I've had a really illustrious career, like you mentioned, doing Playboy, Penthouse, a lot of mainstream magazines, and it's been a really wild, fun ride. And yeah, I'm honored to be here and still here, ready. I mean, I say retired because I've been retired from performing in adult films, but porn people are my people, sex workers are my people, and so I'll always have my pleasers,
Yes.
you know? I always have my pleasers, like, in which is funny because you talked about how you started, which was dancing, and that still to this day remains one of my favorite facets of sex work and of the industry. I absolutely loved dancing.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible feeling, right?
Oh,
Being
so
live on
fun.
stage, and it's
Yeah.
fun.
The energy, the audience, like just I
Yeah.
just I love it. There's no other feeling like that. And like I'm slowly coming up to that retirement, which I'm really just coming to terms with. So I feel like maybe early next year might be the end if I even get any bookings. But we'll see. Like, we'll see. I just once a performer, always a performer. Like
Yes. No, I've always said, like, I would toss my mane in somebody's garage, just to, like, perform, like, one of my songs, because I was gonna ask you what your song was, mine
hmm
is Change from the Deftones, so
Okay.
whenever I would hear Change from the
Classic.
Deftones, I cannot dance normal at a party. I just start hair whipping, and my friends are like,
Are you
"All right,
okay?
Tara, my brother's here," I
Yeah, I
dance
have
like
so many different like sets that I do. It just depends on the crowd, but like I definitely have some good good sets. Like I have people always know me for my Ariana Grande set. I do that one a lot. I have
Okay.
a good weekend set. But I also my favorite one is honestly my rock set, and I start off gosh, what's on that one? Muse is on that one.
Oh,
That whole
yeah.
like come together right now. That
Yeah.
one over me. Yeah, that one. Oh my god. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's high energy. But yeah, I'll miss it when I'm done, which is soon. But anyways, enough about me, Tara. Like I want to fill this whole hour up with you. So I mean, like if you want to quickly get started too, I know you mentioned a really spark notes thing of your career, but like if you want to tell the audience, especially for those who might not know who you are, but maybe like start off from the very beginning of like how you started, and then like we'll kind of catch up to
How I came to
speed.
the dark side.
Yes, how you came to the dark side, exactly.
Right, that's well, I think that the genesis of anyone's career is I mean, that's the number one question I still get, like, "How did you
Hmm.
end up here? Why did you choose sex work?" I think in today's climate, sex work, it's still stigmatized. There's still some taboo there. And for me, starting back in the year 2000, I started off actually shooting magazines. So the very first thing that I ever did in my career was it was actually a test shoot for Playboy magazine.
Oh,
Playboy was doing their annual Playmate search, and I was like, "Oh, that's, I mean, I think it was $25,000 if you became a Playboy bunny. And in my mind, it was like, "Grrr," like, this is
yeah.
fantastic, single girl living in LA. I could really use that money. So I went to Playboy Studio West in Santa Monica. And I'll never forget, it was just as plain as yesterday. I walked through the halls and all the playmates and playmates of the years were just they lined the walls, and I remember looking at the magazine covers and I was like, "Yes, this is my destiny. This is the way. This is what I wanna do." And
Wow.
I did the test shoot, and looking back, it really was a lovely experience. The hair and makeup, doing the test shoot, as fate would have it, I ended up actually having a test shoot with Penthouse Magazine and Suze Randall that same week, and they
Wow.
actually published me first. And
Oh,
so I got Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
story.
so because I had been published in Penthouse first, Playboy said, "We can't publish you for 2 more years. We
Oh.
don't publish girl," like, they would have had to have been the first one. So I was like, "So,
Oh
I'm
my
not gonna be a
god.
Playmate." But fast forward to 2002, they kept their promise, and I'm actually the only woman that's ever been on the cover of Playboy and Penthouse simultaneously. That was in 2002. And then I said, "This is fun, but movies could be more fun."
Uh-huh.
So I started shooting, movies and films, and I think in the early 2000s, the style of adult films was I don't know, I used to have this term porno chic. Like, it was like super porn, right? But
Yeah,
it was so
it was
glamorous.
very
I mean,
glamorous.
it was really glamorous, really beautiful. I put a lot of thought into hair and makeup and sets. And, back then we had these enormous budgets
Right.
and we could just shoot these really, really beautiful movies. Vivid was really good at conceptualizing um, movies and, ideas and themes. And I got to work with really good directors, really good talent, and it was just a really fun time. So with that came a lot of appearances, feature dancing, and yeah,
And
that
everything
was
else.
from 2000 to 2006, like
Wow. That's so crazy. I know, I'm sure like the landscape is probably a bit different too, because like as you mentioned, like with generationally, like that was during a time where I think that sex work was just really, really, really stigmatized and very like
yeah,
edgy. But still
oh
like, oh,
yeah.
it's like, oh wow, like that's what you've chosen for your career. Okay, like why? And I feel like maybe you probably were questioned a lot about that, about your choices, about why you chose this as a career and stuff too. And I mean, has your answer changed at all from like back then, 20 to 25 years ago to now, like looking back?
No, you know
Good.
what? I'm gonna say, I say no affirmatively now. What I will say, from my personal experience, and I talk about it in Sinner Takes All, my memoir, is that from the get-go, my family was supportive. And I think the number one comment question that I despise, that I always see on Twitter, not directed towards me, but directed to performers in general, is, "Oh, what does your family
Yeah,
think?"
it's
And it's
always
like,
that question.
this is such a strange question to me because first of all, we're adults, and the adult industry is for adults. And so it really doesn't matter what somebody's parents think, because I feel like, you know, my parents have accepted that, I'm living my own life comfortably. They're more proud of me that I'm actually just living my life comfortably on my own terms, and that I've done the best with my abilities or gifts. And I think that it comes from, my mother's Thai. She immigrated to the US, and my mother always used to say, "My daughter was really smart. Like, she's used her her beauty and her, for, like, people would call it exploitive,
Right.
but she's like, no, she's actually carved it into her own niche and a business for herself." Also being Asian, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is the extra layer of being
Yes.
I can never pronounce.
Fetishized. Absolutely. That's a huge thing.
So you're like, "Well, do I capitalize on that? Do I exploit it, or do I fight against it?"
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a fine balance between the two, Tara. I don't know if you want to kind of go into that, because a lot of people would either think that, okay, like you're being exploited here, you're being fetishized, but how do you use that towards your advantage?
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one coming from two different directions. For me, it's about setting boundaries. And I think the overall tone with sex work, and this is the advice that, I give anyone that's considering a career in the industry, in industry that of sex work, is that you come in prepared to, um, I want to say, you come in prepared to assert and establish your boundaries, because money is very tempting. Money is something that, I call
Yes.
it's a carrot dangling effect, right? You come in thinking, well, this is just going to be extra, or, oh, this is just going to be something on the weekends. And then $1,000 every weekend turns into, wait, this could be
Right.
a few $1,000s on every weekend. So rather than compromise your integrity, and rather than,
Hmm.
start the snowballing effect, if you have a good grasp on what your boundaries are and what your expectations are, and you keep that at your core, I think it's a lot easier. So for me, for example, I am proudly Thai, and I can use that. I use that in being dominant. I use that in many facets of my personality. I will not use it in, like, race play. I don't do anything race related. So I'm comfortable being
Yes.
like a Thai dominatrix, but I'm not comfortable with you calling me slurs and degrading me and belittling me. So I think that in my way, and again, at the end of the day, we all compromise or rationalize, what's comfortable for us. And that's something that I say, I think that's kind of how you keep your sanity. Like, you can still make your money, you can still do your job, you're not
Yeah.
gonna get irritated, regretful, resentful, or burnt out, and it's like a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, boundaries are it's a must.
A
You
must.
absolutely need to know what your boundaries are coming into this work, and you might not know what those are until you're actually in
Faced with
it.
it, yeah.
And those, yeah, those are really, really great, humbling learning lessons. I mean, that conversation kind of lends us into this whole other conversation about, balancing your personal and your private life. How did you and do you do that currently, because you are such a recognizable figure in the adult industry? So I'm curious to hear like how you're able to cope with that.
I I had it's very interesting because after 9 years, so I started in 2000, and then it was towards the end of 2009, I had a very humbling experience. And it was kind of in twofold. It was like the big financial crash had happened.
Hmm.
And I found myself, money is such a funny thing, right? Because our need for stability as humans is so, it's so necessary. And so for me, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is life changing. I've literally worked this long and I'm losing a lot of things that I've worked really hard for. So it really forced me to refocus and reprioritize my life a little bit. And I had realized up until that moment, all I had done for those 9 years was work, 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 work. I didn't have a personal life. My personal life would be,
Mm.
okay, I don't have to feature this weekend or I don't have to work. And so I'm going to sleep. What kind of life is that? I mean, you're just tired, or
Yeah.
your friends have called and you're like, wait, when did they have a kid? Or wait, who are you with now? Like, moments were just passing me by. And it's hard because some people are like, oh, boo hoo, but you were making money. Yes, but it's not everything. And then when you lose it, or when the things that you've invested it in are floating away, but you don't have any real relationships or friendships, or you know what I mean? Like that's when you kind of sit back and go, okay, I really need to figure out how to balance this. And it's humbling. And I think that it's something that we just have to go through, because if we don't go through something tough like that, then there's no growth. If we're coasting and it's easy all the time, then there's no growth that happens. And so I told myself I'm going to make less money, but I'm going to be okay with that, because the clarity that I found and the happiness that I found was worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's some sage advice that I think every sex worker needs to hear because, yes, there is a lot of potential for making a lot of money in this industry,
But the
which
burnout
is
is
what
hardcore.
draws a lot of people.
Yeah.
Burnout is so real, so real. And, as you were mentioning, like, okay, how am I going to reshift this focus and how am I going to reprioritize? Like, it really begs you to ask the question of, like, what exactly is important to me.
Right.
Hey everyone, it's Carly David. I'm the founder of PS Group. We're the creative marketing agency for sex workers by sex workers. We get it. Things are changing fast. Standing out in this industry is tougher than ever. But whether you need a killer website, eye-catching graphics, merch design, pro-level video editing, we got your back. Our fees are totally project-based too. We never work on percentages or commission. Visit us at sexworkmarketing.com, say hello, let's start a conversation, see how we can navigate these changes together.
Yeah, it seems to me that you really had that like pivotal moment
Well, and
around that time. That's almost like right before you were retired, I think,
it
too.
was. Well, so that was the year that I retired. So, but it's funny because
Mm.
I think also in our profession, we get all these beautiful shiny things. And so I remember
Yes.
like it was I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy, because there was a solid year where I had a few girlfriends and I was like, okay, come over and just help yourself to whatever's in my closet, because I need to go on like a sabbatical. And I remember my one girlfriend was like, this like Gucci bag still has tags on it, and I was like,
Oh my God.
is this what I've been working my ass off for? I mean, you're doing good. That's the thing about sex work, is that it's a type of career where the money is coming in, and there's not a lot of professions that you can earn that kind of money. It's insane. and it
Mhm.
changes
Yeah.
you. So, you tell yourself, "You know what? I don't like people. It's fine. I don't need friends right now because I'm making money and I'm doing what I want and it's fun." But then the burnout is really real. And so you tell yourself, "Okay, the balance is um is so important." So that's why I said I need to retire. I need to retire because I think my personality type too, it was gonna be like all or nothing.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot of our personality types too in the industry. It's just like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep
2 more
hustling.
shifts.
We'll like
If I
make
do
more
2 more shifts,
money.
once I get
Yes.
to 10 grand or once I get to here, I'll stop. But, again, for me, it was adult films. Like, I realized if when I looked at my which I recommend, if you're active in sex work and you're trying to find a way, to balance, what I did was I said, okay, well, filming takes up such a big chunk of my time. It's physically hard on me. I want to go out on top. I want to leave the best of my work out there. I don't want to feel, exhausted and bitter. And I know that this is not a part of the industry that I can continue to go on in. So had retired from that. And I said, but the balance is I can go into webcamming because this will allow me to stay home.
Right.
I can still be
Yes.
creative. I can still dress up and look good. And if somebody pisses me off, boop. So
Yeah. I'll kick you out or I'll block you.
I'll kick you out or
It's the
block you.
best.
And kind of dancing, I missed dancing because I enjoyed that live crowd. I enjoyed that energy. I enjoyed that vibe back and forth, but the travel was kicking my butt. So I said, okay, I still want to make money, so I can stay home, I can perform and do live shows, so I can kind of get the best of that. And it was just really finding another niche and finding something else in the industry that I could transition into because I see that with a lot of performers. It's like I want to stop and I want to have some balance, but how do I do that? With webcamming, I would set certain hours and then I was like, when I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another way of asserting those boundaries too, those hard stop boundaries. Cause some people just like, oh, yeah, again, like it's yeah, when you reach 10 grand or reach this thing. But honestly, like that goal is always going to keep shifting and shifting, which is good, but also really leads you to burn out so much faster and more often too with that kind of mindset.
Well, and it plays with you
So,
psychologically, I think, because our income it fluctuates and it's so
yes.
dependent, on, what a lot of girls will say is, well, I can't afford to take time off. But it's like if you do take that time off, even if it's a day or 2 days, then you come back stronger. You actually do come back stronger. You come back with more clarity, and sometimes you come back with different ideas and you realize, "You know what? This actually isn't working for me, and I could change and do this." I think it's scary. It is really scary to let go of this money, of industry money.
Yeah.
And with the
Yeah.
stigma, you tell yourself, okay, well, I can't really go apply at Starbucks. I mean, I can't go work in the civilian world. I did try that. I was working in a lab a few years ago, a little bit before and
Oh.
then after lockdown, and I actually had no issues. There was one colleague actually, who she tried to out me by saying something
Oh
like,
my gosh.
"Oh, did you know that she's naked on the internet?" And I thought,
Mm.
"What?" I mean,
Yeah.
it happens, doxing happens, it's all really it's
Yes, it
just,
does. It's real.
it's real for us and it's terrifying, and you're never prepared for it when it happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I'm really sorry that it happened to you too. And it's such a professional setting as well. It's such an invasion of privacy.
Mm.
I hear when like I hear of these stories that happen to my colleagues, and it's terrible when I hear that kind of stuff. I mean, when this happened to you, how did you deal with it? Because a lot of people just their world gets turned completely upside down and don't know how to operate, don't know how to pick themselves up. So I'd love to hear like what has helped you get out of that situation, because obviously it's like it's terrible when doxing
Mhm.
happens.
Well, and funny enough, also from another woman, no, because this was someone that I was working with side by
Mm-hmm.
side that I actually had no idea was secretly resentful and just kind of,
Yeah.
like waiting for this right moment. And so she'd actually gone to the doctor and she had said to him, did you know that she shows her boobs on the internet? That's literally what she said. And I
Oh
thought,
my God.
well, thank God she didn't find the anal or like the
Yeah.
hardcore porn. Like if the boobs were like, enough for her, like I was sitting there thinking, oh, okay, good. She didn't find Paradise Island anal fever. But like she was just like making a big deal over my boobs. And funny enough, he
Yeah.
had said to her, so I think for me, when he said this does not have anything to do with or affect her work. Like, he was
Yeah.
very
That's a
direct
great
about it, and this
response.
is who I report to, so I was just like, "Peace out." So, it was a good situation for me, and it ended up actually
Mm-hmm.
being worse for her, but I
Yeah,
think, I've heard
totally.
stories where it doesn't go that way, where your supervisor or superior turns on you, and then it's like, and that's a horrible situation to be in. Um, but because I had a good superior who was like, this has her past or whatever has absolutely no bearing on who she is or her job now. Like he looked at it completely,
I love that.
ethical and logical
Yeah.
as he should, and as
Yes.
I feel like the world should.
Yes.
I mean, in a perfect world, she would have come to me to iron something like this out, I guess. I mean, but this just goes back to as a community, I've often, I mean, I I don't question why people have this sort of hatred or stigma towards sex workers. I think it boils down to, especially in present day, we see all the hatred towards, OnlyFans girls
Yes.
now. Oh, you're on OnlyFans.
Yes.
Um, but it correlates to, I think, how you feel about your own life and your own situation and where you are in life. And sex work for me has been 100% freedom.
Yeah.
I do what I want when I want. You know, if people are open to understanding that not only are we human, but we run a business.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to use this with my fans, when I again, about setting boundaries. I don't answer messages 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I've said to them, listen, if Starbucks is closed, do you go up there and bang on the windows and ask them to make you a drink?
Yeah.
No.
No.
So it's the same thing. If I've told you,
Totally. That's a good way of
I'm
putting
not
it.
taking, but I mean, it's true, right? Or no, my favorite analogy that I like to use, I know a little off topic, is, it's the freebies.
Oh
Like they think
yeah.
it's, they're
They're entitled
entitled
to
to,
it.
like, it's not really work. So just give me a naked picture of you, or why can't you just masturbate for free for 5 minutes and send it to me? And I'm like, well, it's like, I want to go into Chanel and tell them, oh my God, I beat off to your bags all the time. I love them. Like, so could you just give me one because it's so fucking hot and I want it? Like, no.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way, So and then oh, you sell your body. Everybody
Yeah.
sells their time. Everybody sells their labor. Everybody sells their body,
100%.
doctors. I mean, you perform surgery for 16 hours a day. Don't tell me that that's not selling your body or selling labor.
Totally. That's a really, really, really good way of putting it. And I know there are some fans listening to the show, so I hope fans that you're listening and you
The
take,
doctors,
yeah,
yeah.
take note. No, I think that's really
Well, I
great though.
wouldn't, well, my husband is a we talk about finding love, and that was one of the hardest things for me when I was active in the industry. So I did
Mm.
not date. I didn't date while I was active in the industry. I found it
Mhm.
just to be very difficult. You have to really vet people
Yeah.
because how does it come up when they ask what you do?
Mhm.
For me, it was a little bit difficult because most of the time when I would meet someone in public, they knew who I was or they knew what I did. And I never assumed that. I wasn't arrogant in assuming like, oh, okay, I'm going to go somewhere and everybody knows who I am. But there would always be that expectation of, ooh, this is going to be fun dating a porn star. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's my job. That's not who I am
Yeah. That's a whole
all the time.
conversation too. I mean, like, people, I've done some episodes on like dating and the expectations that, people should set for themselves, because like if people get obsessed with like, oh my gosh, you do this for work, so you're going to be amazing in bed or this and that. And you're like, that is a persona that I play online, or like a persona that I play on stage or whatever. For my job, it's for some of us, it's completely separate entities. For some of us, there's like a part of our personality that's intertwined with it, but like it's a really sharp delineation between the two. And I think some
Well, and
people
the
don't get
expectation.
it. The expectation, for sure.
Yeah. The expectation. And I think the entitlement to think that, this preconceived notion that you have that I'm always going to be this way. And I think that that sort of lends itself to, I've had people say, well, it's your fault, then don't act that way. And it's like, well, because if I really, it's in one breath, I want you to be, I want to know who you really are
Oh
authentically
my
without
gosh.
all of this.
Right.
Right?
I
You
hate
love that line.
that.
I'm going to use all the lines on you.
I hate that. Or like when you're at the club and they're like, tell me what your real name is. And I'm just like, go away.
Yes. Well, and it's like, do you not understand that, you are in my space
Hmm.
where I mean, there's going to be an exchange here, hopefully, but there also has to be respect. And I think that unfortunately, that's what society has placed on us as a community, is that we're not worthy of that and we're not deserving of that. And so we have to work really hard, not just for ourselves, but I think within our community, to keep those standards up and to kind of like what you're doing with your podcast, to constantly, gently even remind, our fans, our friends, our people around us. I was going to use the example of my husband. He's an attorney.
Mm.
And so what we do is actually relatable, because I can't tell you how many times we've been out and they find out he's a defense attorney and they're like, okay, well, a long time ago, I stabbed someone. And he's like, whoops, nope, I am not here to do a
Yeah, I'm not hearing that.
consultation.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing, yeah, one, I'm not hearing this, like, this is confidential. But, the audacity, I think, just as a whole, that we have to, just put our, encroach on people. And I think with sex workers, it's so important that we're therapists. I mean, we do a lot of things that not just revolve around being sexy, being hot. And I think that's something that's difficult to explain when we also go into the intimate space or the dating space, because so many guys have this tunnel vision that we're just hot creatures and
Hmm.
we're insatiable dolls. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you don't even understand that half the time I'm just consoling a man,
Yeah.
or, talking. Like, you've been in VIP where they're like, I just want to talk to you. And you're like, fabulous.
Yeah, I'm like, perfect. This is like my favorite situations to be in. It's like, you don't have to dance for me. Like, I just want to sit and
Yeah.
be listened to. And I was like, oh, fine with me. As I continue drinking my drink.
Yes, and right, exactly, but, it's such an important part of, back to, that we're human,
Yeah,
and that, that is the connection that we provide. So we're not all one dimensional, and sex work isn't just, it's multifaceted
absolutely.
in this way,
Yeah, and as
and we
you're
always have to break it down and explain it,
That's the
so that people
sad
can
part,
go,
though, that we have to break it down and explain it all the time, and that's because, like, the industry is, like, highly stigmatized, but, people forget the humanization aspect of it, as we were saying, like, fans, society, people just view us as just, like, beings, but they forget the human aspect of it. Like it just
yeah,
they forget that we have feelings. They forget that we have families to take care of. They forget like a lot of things. Like, oh, they forget that it's just another job or someone's chosen career. And I think we really need to bring that back to reality for them. And I think, it's getting a little bit better with this generation, but we still have a lot of work to do. A lot of people have a lot of unlearning to do as well, and to push their biases and judgments aside, which is
Mm.
difficult for a lot of people. But yeah.
I think the difference in my generation, talking about from 2000 to 2010 and now, I think what's helped a little bit, as backwards as sounds to some people, because I've gotten into a few debates about it, I feel like social media has helped with that. Because
Definitely.
social media has allowed people and performers and our community basically to vent and to
Yeah.
kind of give more of a behind the scene. Like, for example, for me, you know, in back in my time, fans would come to conventions, and when they would stand in line to meet us, it was literally like a minute or two of like, "Hey, hi, how's your day going? Nice to meet you. Where are you from?" And then you'd sign a picture and they'd go. And so you'd either leave them with a really good impression, or they'd just be like horrified that they just met you and they'd like want to run off, or like somebody dragged them there. So they were like, ah. But with social media, there's connections that can be made there, right? Like that's how
Mhm.
you and I got connected. I mean, you start out talking about something, and then I think people do see the human side of you because you connect over Harry Potter or Star Wars, or they see that you have interests
Yes.
and you can kind of show that other side of yourself to your fans, which kind of brings me into how I transitioned into my safe space, um, and what led me to move abroad and to kind of
Yeah.
um, reiterate my, I guess I don't want to say image, or reestablish my
Reestablish.
brand. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
I want to say.
Was social media. So
Mhm.
when I retired from filming, I started showing a more personal side of myself. I started talking about my family a little bit, and I would post more of myself day to day and what I was doing. And I started my blog. And then as I was moving, what I found was that a lot of my fans started relating to me
Yeah.
on a more personal level, but not too personal. Like when I was really good about like if they would ask me what I felt were too personal questions, I would say, I'm sorry, that's personal for me, but I try to, smooth it over and give them another answer. But what I found was that they followed me. They've transitioned and followed me into what I'm comfortable doing. And, I think I saw, I would say, an increase also in my retention,
Mm.
because they saw a different authentic side of me. They realized, okay, we were stroking it to her back then, and now she's a little older and she's doing other things, and we're following her into that. And you're going to lose some along the way.
Totally. Yeah.
But this was sort of a way for me to continue cultivating my brand and transitioning out of the industry, but still being in it enough that was comfortable for me.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you found that, because like I think that's also a difference between like, the 2000s and just like these pay sites didn't quite exist back then, like paid subscription sites and stuff too, which really
Right.
allows for fans to see a more like personal side of you, to really get to know you, to kind of have that quote unquote access to you, which I think that is
Yes.
super trendy right now and people are really loving it. But with that, obviously, like they want more access to you. They want to be messaging you. I'm like, I'm sleeping right now. Like, I'm not going to be responding to you right now. You have to wait till the morning, kind of thing. So I think that there's it's like a double edged sword a little bit too. More good than
Yes.
bad, but like enables you to again exercise this freedom of, you could be anywhere in the world doing your sites, doing like your apps and stuff like that too. So I think that's a really great shift overall in the industry for sure, and it enabled you to move abroad, which I'm also dying to hear that story as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I initially, so I was living in Los Angeles, and my daughter was very young at the time. She was 2 years old. And my partner and I, her father worked, he's a union costumer. So he works on Marvel films, on all kinds of big sets. And um, we actually mutually, it was funny, he was going to work on a movie in, I think, South America. And I had gotten an offer to do feature dance shows in Italy. And I was like, heck yeah. Like, I've danced in so many different countries all over the world. And I had taken like a few-year break. So I said, yeah, this will be really cool. And I spent a month in Italy, um, like north, south, east, west. I just went all over the country. I performed, I think, 40 shows, 40 feature shows. And as I was flying back to the US, I felt really sad. There was something inside me that was like, you know what? Just go for it. Just go home, put your house on the market, pack up your bags, and try it. Try it out. Like, you don't have to be in LA. You can be anywhere in the world you want. And going back to what I had mentioned earlier, in the show, is I'm close to my parents. My parents have, over the years, they've always supported me in everything that I've done. I've always been able to go to both of them, to talk to them, to get advice from them. And I remember my dad was like, you're totally, you know, go. There's nothing stopping you. And so everything just kind of lined up. Like, my house sold. I said, I don't need anything. I took 2 suitcases and I landed here in Italy. And, it was in the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, I don't speak Italian. Like,
I was gonna ask.
I didn't think this through. Like, I remember I was like, well, wait a minute, I got to go get utilities. I got to go get Wi-Fi. Like, when I landed
Yeah.
here, it sort of hit me. And I realized, okay, wait a minute. Like, I just rolled up into another country. I'm not a tourist. I'm actually going to, like, I'm living here. I just have to figure this stuff out, And it was
Wow.
an adventure for the first year. It
I
definitely,
bet.
oh yeah. And it's incredibly isolating. That was,
Mm,
so the first thing I was going to say was, learn the language of where you're going to go, or at least
yes.
make an attempt to do that, because that is, communication is everything. You think
Totally.
you're learning words and it's really easy, but when you actually have to go have a conversation in a public setting where you're trying to hook up utilities, or you're trying to do, I don't want to say complicated things, but bureaucratic things, you realize it's not that easy to put all those words together, to communicate, to articulate, to get what you
Right.
want. So that was fun.
Right.
That was
Yeah, I'm sure
fun.
that's very humbling for you.
It's very humbling, but it's a lovely country, and I'm really happy to be here. And actually, there was a question from, I believe it was Andrea.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Was that the one? Yeah, the Q&A. We can move on to that part two as well. Andrea said, now that you spent years in Italy, what advice would you give to expat moms or future moms about moving to Italy? And what resources have you found the most helpful or wish you knew about sooner?
Right. So it was funny. I had thought of, I had, when we were on Twitter looking at what popped in my mind was, I remember sitting up one night and I was drinking grappa, which is like really strong. And
Yes.
I Googled, I've moved to Italy. What do I do? And
I love it.
it was so, I was like, because I had like, I didn't have a good webcam session that night. And I was just like, blah,
Mm.
like, the night for me was just like going to crap. So I Googled that, and this website came up, Surviving Italy. And her name is Elizabeth
Ooh.
M. Evans, and she's a fantastic writer. And I just went old school, and I just started going through Tumblr, RIP. I don't know,
Wow.
I think it's back, but I
Yeah,
started going through
RIP.
some of, right? Rest in peace. But I started finding all of these really cool blogs that women had written about their life and moving abroad. And I was like laughing, and I was like, okay, this is like, I can do this. Like, we need a
Mhm.
connection. That's what it boils down to
Mhm.
at the end of the day. We're all human. We have a lot more in common than we think we do. And when I started reading through some of these blogs, it gave me that hope. It gave me that, okay, I can do this. Like, someone else has done it with less, or someone else has done it with more, and I can figure this out too. I'm not the only one. Like, my mom came from Thailand with nothing when she was 18
Right.
years old. And I'm like, if she could come from Thailand
Incredible.
at 18, have me in Montana, I can do this. Like, I can
Wow.
totally do this. I'm older, I'm wiser, I have resources, I
Mhm.
have money, I have my health. Like, I mean, there you have to it's gratitude. It's really about having gratitude. So that's her surviving Italy, and there's a great expat letter called Expat Exchange. And if anyone's ever interested in like moving anywhere in the world, Expat Exchange is a huge network around the world, and you can just choose
Mm.
what country you're thinking about. And people just, it's almost like Twitter for that country, and you just connect
Oh,
with people.
cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's just
That's
people that
awesome.
have, stories or advice. There's lawyers on there, doctors on there, other there's lots of people who've just, at one point somebody said enough, and they've packed up their stuff, and for some people it's panned out, for some people it hasn't. But
Yeah.
I think sharing all of our stories collectively, it's like locker room talk, right? We all
Yeah,
kind of get a
totally.
little bit like, oh, that's good to know.
No, I think that that makes a lot of sense too, and thank you for those resources. I'll plug those links in the show notes below. But I think it's really great because I know there's so many people. At least I've had conversations with so many colleagues of mine that are wanting to get. I'm in Canada, but like wanting to move abroad, wanting to move to Mexico, wanting to move to Spain. And I mentioned this before earlier, but like for various reasons in terms of like for Americans, like the political climate is a little bit chaotic right now. I mean, it's always chaotic. That people with all these like all this online work that we do, like being able to just work from anywhere and people wanting to start fresh. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different reasons why, and people wanting to kind of experience something different. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of things you gotta think about. You gotta think about banking, you gotta think about utilities, you gotta think about finding a place, your
Yeah.
accommodations, the language, cultural differences. I mean, did you come up with any like culture shock or anything when you first moved abroad and we're like, this is not LA anymore?
Yeah. You know what it was? Something that I think, one of the funny things about being American, having grown up in America, having grown up with immense privilege, because we do have such an incredible amount of
Yes.
privilege. Europe, Italy is an incredible country. It is a beautiful country. But, there are things here that, for example, like, I line dry all of my laundry. It takes double the amount of time for me to do laundry versus just putting it in the washer and then putting it in the dryer. That may sound like minuscule, but it's actually something that, makes a big difference. Or food, going to get food, but also just not being able to communicate, you know, having to take transportation, or just going around and not really knowing pleasantries, or, small talk, or enough to sort of get by. I think it makes it incredibly frustrating. And so, Americans, we always have this thing that like wherever we go, everyone's going to speak English. We just assume that, like, it's really
Right.
weird. Like, it's not weird, it's kind of ignorant, but we just assume that like everywhere we go, you must know some English. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
or we
Yeah.
want an exact translation of what you're saying in
Right.
English. No, this is not
Hmm.
possible. Like, the nuances of language don't always work that way. So I think that in the beginning, you have to just ask yourself why. You really have to ask yourself why I want to move, and really make the pros and cons list about, do you want better food? Do you want, how to, or that may sound petty, not petty, but
That sounds like my kind of
factoring
priority.
in Well, I mean, like for me personally, I know people who, and I was this way when I lived in LA. It's like, I can't believe what I used to spend on groceries and then driving to
Yeah,
3 or 4 different grocery stores. And it had to be
right.
organic or it had to be this. And I'm like, this is crazy. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself, and if it's like it's feasible for you to do
Yeah.
so, and also the responsibility that comes with traveling, or moving abroad in general. Is like really like my problem is like really making sure that you're respecting that culture and you're not
Yes.
just kind of like letting all your American out, letting all your Canadian out, or whatever country you come from, like really taking time to understand what those cultural norms are or of how things might be different and really open your mind to that. I think that can honestly teach you a lot, as a person and as you travel too. Like it's very, again, humbling.
As a traveling is so humbling, and I have to say, I went home for the first time last year and then again this year. So my mother's Thai, and I had
Mhm.
never been to Thailand. I had actually saved up going back to Thailand because I wanted to go with my mother, and, I write about it in, my blog, but my mother just she's not ready to go back. She has a lot of reasons,
Mm.
personal reasons as to why she left and why she doesn't wanna go back, and it took me time
Wow.
mentally to understand that, absolutely, she left during a war. It was just a very, very different she had very different reasons, and she didn't
Mhm.
see Thailand the same way that 99% of us see it, which is like beautiful country, beautiful
Yeah.
beaches, like, for her, it was deeply, deeply different, and so when I
Mhm.
went back, I could physically I can't describe it, but it was a feeling of looking around and realizing, okay, I get it. Like, like you were saying, I saw so much. I could really see the difference in like the Thai, like, and then the expat community. And like you were
Mhm.
saying, just how, again, what our purpose is and how we want to treat our community and what we want to leave behind. I mean, I think just from looking from the outside in, it was almost hard for me sometimes to see how I mean, not trying to be judgy, but just kind of how the community there was.
Right.
Like it was
Yeah,
in
that's sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. Like I'm trying to articulate it in a way where I'm like not being emotional about it, but yeah.
No, I think that's really great for you to mention, and also just like and talking about like expats too, and like there's expat hubs in so many cities and stuff too. Like, I think it's like because I know so many people that like live everywhere, and I think it's really important to really try to immerse yourself within that country, wherever what country you're going to, whatever the culture is, because it's so easy to get stuck in your little expat
Yes.
bubble and seems comfortable and everyone's speaking English and there's no bit of discomfort there. But I also think that you're missing out on the authenticity of what that country brings, and also your privilege of you living in said country, right?
Exactly. Sorry. So I guess that's what I was really trying to bring forth and articulate because I also see it
Mm-hmm.
here in Europe. And unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
when I see these things on Instagram or whatever, for example, so back to Thailand, when I'm seeing communities of, men, right? And they're just talking down. Like, Thai people are very humble. They're very
Mm-hmm.
respectful, kind, humble people. And when you're so loud in their face and just acting so entitled, I feel like, well, you're here in their country
Oh,
and
Tara,
they're
one last time you froze.
actually,
Hold that
it's the,
thought.
"Oh my gosh, everything
Hold
here is so
that
cheap." I'm
thought. We're
like,
almost
"For
done.
us, you do understand that she's working and that her entire month salary is what is cheap to you." Like, it's just being respectful to the fact that not everybody, the community that you're infiltrating yourself in, um, you could actually not be helping. it's such a privilege to be in this beautiful country, and this is their country, this is their home, this is where, you wouldn't, I think it's that they don't understand sometimes that it's the number one thing that I always hear is, "Oh my gosh, it's so cheap and it's cheap and it's this and it's
Yeah.
that." And I'm like, "You do understand that this is her entire month's salary, I mean,
Yeah.
just to be mindful that the local people here that live here, that work here, that have grown up here, this is they're proud of where they're from too, and that, infiltrating into their community, ideals that aren't necessarily respectful towards them,
Hmm.
and perpetuating the stereotypes. And, again, that just having gratitude for the fact that you can come on vacation and you can spend time here, but to leave it clean and to leave it, to be polite and to be, um, I think, mindful, for me,
Hmm.
especially in certain places, I think we sometimes only see the polished parts, and we don't really see
Yes.
the
Oh my
impact
gosh.
that we're leaving
Hmm.
behind. And so for me, it's so important to seek out, like you're saying, you know, the local places where, families have been cooking for generations. And, even if you can't communicate, they're just, they're proud to cook you like wonderful food. And like these are the memories and things that
Hmm.
it works both ways. Like you can
Hmm.
feel good about, traveling and supporting,
Yeah.
that the money will go towards a community. And
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important. Like, I think I just see so much like people going to certain places, and this is primarily my experience in observation and seeing like my friends go. I'm Filipino Chinese, so like I'm very protective of like, when I see everyone's going to the Philippines right now, and like, they have this very like cleansed approach of like, or cleansed view or experience, which is fine and great, but then I just wonder like, oh my gosh, are you like, how are you giving back to that country? How are you like paying your thanks and your gratitude for being on that land? Like that stuff is really important for me.
me
And there's
too.
just a lot of like, a lot of people wanting to move there, and like what that does to communities there. Is that going to increase the cost of living around that community? It's just something I like to think about, and would hopefully plant some seeds to listeners. I know listeners, it's like such a different style of episode today, but hopefully you guys have an open mind. I think it actually it relates to sex workers too in our community, and allies and people wanting to support our community don't know how, because we are also very defensive about our community. um
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, one of the things that um, was always comes up, funny enough, um, is we support each other,
Hmm.
1,000%. I mean, I
Yes.
always, when I'm abroad or wherever, and, when I'm at a club, I'm like, you cannot sit here. You need to make room for those of us who are paying. Like, I am very, very adamant about, taking care of each other and making sure that, um, like when I go to a club, or I mean, I love um, supporting, other sex workers, and especially in their own endeavors, like, or other
Hmm.
endeavors, and I always try to, I hate that whole, oh, get a real job. Okay. Goes to school,
Oh
gets a real
yeah.
job. Oh no, but you can't work here. It's like, well, which is it? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you wanted me to pursue something else, and then I go to pursue something else, and it's like, "Oh, no, you can't do that. You're not good enough for that. Just stay stripping or stay this,"
I
or,
know.
and it's like, understand that your favorite creator or dancer or whatever, sex worker, whatever they decide to pursue, support them in that. This is
Yeah.
only a part of who they are. And
Hmm.
it brings them, even, a lot of fans I've heard, they're like, well, if I don't want to buy movies, what else I could do? What else can I do? Get her something from her wish list. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
everybody likes gift cards. If she finds out she's, if you find out she's traveling, contribute to her trip. I mean, we do things outside of the industry that bring us joy all the time. And,
Hmm.
we just want to be supported.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, because it's always like, well, I don't want to, that's not my thing, or like, I don't want to do that. But yes, as you mentioned, there's so many other ways you can support your fellow creators, your sex workers. We do lots of different things. There's many different
Yeah.
facets and sides to us. So really, I think like, this whole humanization conversation, I think, has been a big theme in this episode today, and I think it's important, and hopefully that would be the takeaway for so many people listening at
I
home.
hope so. Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
understand, I always say to, fans and friends and just to our community out there is that, hey, your favorite stripper, your favorite porn star, your favorite, author, whatever, she's going to move on. She's going to transition into other things. And, it would be great if you came along. It would be great if you followed us. It would be great if you supported us. And
Hmm. Yeah.
that's, we're human. And I mean, I am so grateful for my career and for my time, like the high time in the industry, but I'm also really enjoying my life now. And,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, whether you're sexting me or texting me, joining my sites, or reading my blog, I mean, it means so much to me. I don't take any of that for granted at all.
I
Because when
love
you
that. And
do, I also think as a person, as a creator, that's when it stops being fun too. So
hmm
as sex workers, we also have to really, even on the hard days, we're not going to have, some days we have like a $10 day, some days we have $100
yeah,
day. But we've got to
totally.
treat them all the same and just be grateful
Yes.
and be proud of yourself.
Love that. I mean, all of this sound advice, Tara, as a person who's been in the industry as
I
long as you
hope so. I
have,
don't
which
know.
is
Maybe I was just like,
great. Not at all. No, this is so perfect. I mean, like, with that being said, with your website and all that, where can people find you and keep in touch with you?
terapatrick.com. It's still there. It'll be there till I decide to hang up the pleasers and hang up the thong, I guess, and hang up the
That link
factory's
is in the
closed.
show notes. Yeah, factory's closed. We
Yay.
still got some time. I mean, this was such a great conversation, and thank you so much for your time today, Tara, and
Thank
chatting with
you.
us and sharing a bit about your life, like after porn and stuff too, and to see like where you're at right now with the life updates and stuff. Like, I think it's so fascinating and great, and hopefully this episode provided some help to those who are wanting to move abroad and you really just need help with like establishing their boundaries and stuff too. Like, it was a great conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you for having me, and congratulations for having your 5-year anniversary. So that's a
you.
milestone. Yay!
Yeah,
Keep
definitely a
talking.
milestone. And for everyone else listening at home, it's Stripped by Sia on X, on Strip by Sia podcast on Instagram, stripbysia.com. If you want to pitch yourself to be on the show, there's a little contact form you there. Please fill it out. It's my favorite way of getting inquiries and pitches and stuff. And yeah, if you want to support the show, it is patreon.com/stripped by Sia. And if you all want to do me a favor, feel free to rate and rate 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. Write a 5-star review if you feel compelled to, if you've learned something from the show. I would love that. It really helps other people discover the show as well. And it's new episodes every single Sunday at Pacific Standard Time, dropping at midnight. So thank you so much. And thank you again, Tara. Thanks for staying up later today in your over your dinner hour.
Yay! Yeah, I'm gonna get my walker now and make dinner.
Thanks again.
Mwah. Thank you.
You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.